Everyone who has lost a loved one knows what it is to experience volatile and powerful dark emotions. Some of those experience deep despair, sadness, guilt, anger, taunting fear, aching emptiness, and overwhelming loneliness.
For the year, I was not myself anyways. I was a very angry person, but now I'm pretty much back to who I was, I think.
I certainly would not judge anybody who reaches out, because I felt that pain to be almost to the point of being unbearable, and some days quite unbearable. So I can understand why people move towards unhealthy choices. So it's very important that rather than taking drugs and alcohol, are there other things that we can do in place of that?
It's difficult for me to share emotions openly. So other people may be different. Maybe they find that very easy, but for me it's more difficult.
I think it's incredibly important for us to be able to feel comfortable with God so that we can tell God we're angry.
I got the phone call that he'd had another stroke or fallen, and he was in hospital, and it was very serious. And I got another call saying, no, it's okay, he's going to be okay. Because, do I go over or not? I said, should I come over? And they said, well, no, wait a bit. Then I got a call. My sister said that it is bad. They don't think he's going to pull through. And I said, well, do I come over now? And she said, you know what, Mike, it could be ages. It could be tomorrow. If you come over now and he's in hospital 3 weeks later and you have to come, what are you going to do? She said, I honestly believe it's better off if you, and this is worth talking about, if you wait, and then when he dies, then come over to be for the funeral and to be with Mom. I think that would be better. And I did that, and I wish I hadn't done that, and it was interesting, I then spoke to a couple of friends, and both of them, in a very, very clever way that I think only a good clergyman, they didn't tell me what to do, they said, what tends to happen is when someone dies, you're not there for them, you're there for yourself. He probably won't even know you're there, but you'll know. And at that point, I was about to book the trip. My Uncle Harold called me and he said, Mike, there's no easy way of saying that your dad has passed away. And I cried a lot, and I went there, and I wish I had seen him before he died, lying there. My sister said, Mike, remember him as he was, not as he is now. He looks terrible. I wish I had been there. He died alone. My mum, with dementia, she was there, but not always exactly sure what was going on, that sort of thing. My sister was there a lot, but my sister has 2 children, one of whom is handicapped, and she couldn't be there 24 hours. It was no one's fault, but I wish he hadn't died alone. I wish someone would have been with him. You hear of these deaths when people are around the bed, and they're praying and they're with and they're saying nice things. It must be better. I think, was he frightened? Was he in pain? Probably not in pain, but that's always really got to me. And for my sake, I suppose. And some of it is selfishness in a way, just to be there to say, I'm here, Dad, And my mum, sometimes there were moments of partial clarity that used to, not now, used to come through the dementia. And she said at one point, I've never forgotten it, I wonder if he was waiting to see everyone. And I'm not even sure she meant that. But it came out that way, and it hit me like a hammer. Was he waiting for me before he went? And, I wish.
Sometimes there's the loss of appetite. Sometimes an individual will have trouble sleeping. Sometimes there will be uncontrollable crying without warning. A person will see something, it'll trigger a response, and all of this is normal. All of this is very much in keeping within the range of normal response to trauma.
In order to master the dark emotions of grief, it is essential that we lay a firm foundation in our understanding of human emotions.
The Latin root of the word emotion is moere, meaning to move. Energy is defined as the ability to do work. Emotions are a form of energy that creates internal movement.
And there's a huge ignorance of death in the Western world because we're so frightened of it and we see it so seldom. It's a great taboo now. In Victorian North America, Victorian England, for example, everyone saw death on a weekly basis. People died young and then they just saw people. they knew of death. There would be a body. They weren't so frightened of it. Sex was the great taboo then. Today, it's almost compulsory to talk about sex all the time and become an incredible bore about it usually. But don't talk about death, because we have this extraordinary age where we assume we're not going to die. And it's a bit of a surprise, because it's 100%. It's going to happen. But don't, anti-aging, don't grow old, fear death, because we're so materialistic. For me, the emotion that I've never got over, not sure if I ever will, I hope so, is guilt. With my dad, guilt that I didn't love him enough, guilt that I wasn't there when he died, guilt that he died alone, guilt that I didn't understand what being a father was. Whereas with me, it wasn't that it was a bad relationship. He was very proud of me. I don't think I was proud of him, though. And I was wrong. I should have been proud of him, because his achievements were extraordinary. He raised a family and he gave us a decent house and so on.
Emotional energy can take different forms.
I think it's common for people to feel anger, whether they have faith or whether they don't. And I think for some who are solid Christian believing folk, this sense of rage sometimes is a real surprise to them.
But she made me remember looking in this mirror, and I was crying, and then I screamed at the mirror, how could this happen to somebody like him? Why such a violent death for such a gentle person?
Death is a powerful event that creates a seismic shift in the deep recesses of the unconscious. Like a tsunami, it begins to move colossal amounts of water towards the surface, where, like emotions, the gigantic waves pound their devastating consequences. Like energy, emotions do not disappear, but demand flow. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only demands flow. Emotions, like pressured water, demand to be released somehow. The ego's defense walls must thicken in order to manage the extra pressure to keep control. When we try to control them too much, we become defensive, rigid, less flexible, less free.
If grief is not allowed to proceed properly and thoroughly, it can wreak enormous havoc in the lives of individuals or families. Sometimes people are denied the opportunity to grieve thoroughly. And grief repressed is grief unresolved. It can manifest itself again later on in life in the inability to form lasting relationships.
Unbefriended dark emotions that are ignored create an emotional logjam. Even dark, unwanted, and often frightening emotions need to be acknowledged and released. Aborted grief will stagnate and can take the form of depression, anxiety, and rage. It's important to remember that emotions aren't positive or negative. They're energies inside us encouraging us to move. They can serve us in the process of transformation from the life that was to the new one we'll need to create.
I find that tragedy doesn't create strength in us. Tragedy doesn't create weakness in us. Tragedy exposes what's inside of us.
I became very depressed. I kind of went more inward. My mother noticed it. I was more with myself. I didn't really talk to a lot of friends.
I just figure it's almost like we're getting so used to not having him around. He's just a memory, and that, I hate saying that.
My housemate's parents came to our house at school, and they left, they picked up my housemate and her sister. And I was sitting on the couch, I never told you this, watching them all leave together, and I felt jealous.
Sometimes people are disturbed by the dark emotions they feel. Incorrectly, they associate them with emotional weakness, moral decay, spiritual inferiority, or personal inadequacy. They're ashamed of these emotions and don't allow them the normal flow of the grieving process, and wrongly believing they're destructive, negative, and harmful.
For the first 4 years, as I mentioned earlier, My response was more one of avoidance. So with holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, when it's a time that families would get together, I would seek the company of my extended family rather than having to deal with the absence of a spouse.
Finding people around you that will help you to express, allow you to express, that will listen to you as you process, not shut you down, but listen to you.
When emotions are allowed to flow naturally, they communicate with us and protect us. They can be a guide for our journey.